Imagine this. You're trapped in a cold, gray prison cell. The walls are closing in. The air is thick with regret, with injustice. You stare at the ceiling, replaying the same question over and over. How did I end up here? But deep down, you already know the answer. Your wife, the woman you swore to love and protect, put you here. Not a stranger, not an enemy, but the very person who once whispered in your ear, "I will never betray you." This is the story of Kian Voss, a devoted husband, a man who built his life around love and loyalty. He believed in family. He believed in forever, but forever can turn to hell in an instant. A young girl, Elora Finch, just 17 years old, her life ended before it even began. Her body was found near the river, wrapped in a sack bag. Like discarded garbage, the town was horrified. The police needed justice, and in their rush to find a killer, they made one. They said Kian did it. The evidence? Circumstantial. The trial? Rushed. And the witness that sealed his fate? The one person he trusted more than anything in the world. His wife, Serafina Wade. Kian Voss, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. And just like that, his life was over. His world shattered. But what Kian didn't know, what no one knew, was that the real betrayal wasn't inside that courtroom. It was waiting for him outside those prison walls. Before we dive into today's shocking case, I need to ask you something important. Can you imagine? We've reached the required watch hours, but our subscriber count is still too low. That means thousands of people are watching, but not subscribing. If you've enjoyed our deep, gripping crime stories, if you want more shocking, untold cases, then please take a second and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it helps us continue bringing the most chilling true crime stories every week. We put in countless hours researching, writing, and producing these videos, and all we ask is for your support. So if you're watching right now and haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. Let's grow this community together. Now, let's get into today's case, because this one will leave you speechless. It was a night like any other, until it wasn't. A scream pierced through the quiet town of Black Hollow, a chilling, heart-stopping cry that would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. A body was found, a young girl just 17 years old, her life brutally stolen. Her name was Elora Finch, a bright, ambitious teenager with dreams of becoming a journalist. She had her whole future ahead of her, until she crossed paths with the wrong people. Her body was discovered wrapped in a sack bag, dumped near Black Hollow Creek. The town was horrified. The media called it a senseless act of violence. The police called it a priority case. And behind the scenes, someone was already preparing their next move. At the center of this tangled web of lies was Serafina Wade, Elora's cousin. But she wasn't grieving. She wasn't heartbroken, because behind her tears was a deadly secret. Serafina wasn't alone in this deception. There was another man, a ghost from her past, Jareth Cole, her ex-boyfriend, a man with a violent history, a man who had every reason to want Kian gone. Jareth had always been obsessed with Serafina. He hated the fact that she had moved on with Kian. And Serafina, she knew exactly how to use that to her advantage. Together, they set a deadly trap, and the target, Kian Voss. When the police arrived at the crime scene, the pressure to find a suspect was overwhelming. They needed an arrest, and they needed one fast. Then Serafina gave them exactly what they wanted: a name, a story, and just enough evidence to make it believable. The so-called proof. A shirt covered in Elora's blood, but here's the truth. It was planted in Kian's truck. A text message fabricated to look like Kian was angry at Elora before her death. A fake witness statement. Jareth claimed he saw Kian near the creek on the night of the murder. The police believed they had their man. The town turned against him. The media painted him as a monster. And before Kian even stepped foot in a courtroom, his fate was already sealed. Kian swore on his life that he was innocent, but no one cared. Serafina cried on the witness stand, spinning her web of lies. Jareth played the role of a concerned friend, and with no one to defend him, Kian was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Prison isn't just about losing your freedom, it's about losing everything. His reputation gone. His career destroyed. His family abandoned him. His future stolen. The worst part, while Keon rotted away behind bars, Serafina and Jareth were out there living their best lives. Not only was Serafina free, she had moved on with Jareth. And the biggest betrayal of all, she had 2 kids for the man who framed her own husband. But what happens when an innocent man is finally set free? What happens when he comes home to find his entire world stolen from him? After 20 long years, Keon Voss stepped out into a world that had moved on without him. The man who walked into that prison was gone, left behind in a place where hope dies and time stands still. What emerged was a shadow of the man he used to be, a man desperate for answers and haunted by betrayal. Prison changes you, it breaks you, but the real pain begins when you step out into a world that doesn't even notice your back. He was a free man on paper, but in reality, Keon was a ghost, walking through a life that wasn't his anymore. Freedom wasn't the gift he had hoped for. Everywhere he turned, he was met with the same thing: judgment, rejection, isolation. But what hurt most wasn't the stranger's stares. It was the silence from the people he loved. He told himself it was a mistake, that the pain of prison had warped his mind. But when Keon finally walked through the gates of his past, he was met with a truth so devastating, it nearly brought him to his knees. The man who stole his freedom was now living the life that had been ripped from him. And then came the final blow. The children, a boy and a girl, were calling Jareth Dad. In that moment, Keon realized the horrifying truth. The years he spent in prison weren't just stolen, they were given to someone else. The man who had framed him, destroyed him, and sent him to rot behind bars was now raising a family with the woman Keon once loved. What do you do when the man who ruined your life takes it all? What do you do when your world is reduced to ashes and you're standing there watching someone else live your dream? The world saw Keon as a free man, but in his heart, he was still trapped, not by the bars of a prison, but by the weight of betrayal, pain, and unimaginable loss. But here's the thing about a man with nothing left to lose. He becomes something else entirely. He becomes dangerous, and for Keon Voss, freedom wasn't about moving on. It was about making things right. Keon Voss tried to move on. He told himself he would be a free man. He had served his time, endured the pain, and survived the worst. But the truth? He was never free. Not really. Because the moment he walked out of those prison gates, he stepped into a world where his name was still cursed, his story still stained, his life still stolen. And, no matter how much he tried, he couldn't forget. He couldn't forgive. He thought about leaving town, starting over. But where would he go? Who would take him in? Society had already decided. He was a murderer, a monster, an ex-convict who would never be anything more. The world had no place for him. It should have been him. He should have had that life. A home, a wife, a child to call his own. But someone stole it from him. Someone ripped it away without remorse. He tried to push the anger down. He told himself he was better than revenge, that he would be the bigger man. But the betrayal whispered to him in the dark. It taunted him. It laughed in his face. She moved on, so quickly, so easily. Did she ever love him? Did she ever grieve him, or had he just been a stepping stone to the life she really wanted? Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces. Serafina, Jareth, laughing, holding hands, living the life that had been stolen from him. At first, he only wanted to watch, to see how much they had changed, to understand why they did what they did. But curiosity quickly became obsession. He learned their patterns, their routines, where they worked, where they shopped, where they felt safest. The more he watched, the more he realized they weren't even haunted by what they had done. They lived without guilt, without fear, and that was unforgivable. Cut to Keon gripping a rusty switchblade, the camera zooming in on his knuckles turning white. The world had let them walk free, but he wouldn't. That was the moment Keon Voss realized he was never supposed to be free, because true freedom meant taking back what was his. He had lost everything. Now, so would they. The time had come. No more waiting, no more watching. The anger that had simmered inside him for so long was now at a boiling point. And tonight, they would pay. He had played this night over and over in his mind, every detail, every step, and now all that was left was to execute it. It was almost laughable. They built a beautiful life on the ruins of his, and now he was here to tear it down. For years he had wondered if she ever regretted it, if she ever lost sleep over what she had done. But looking at her now, he had his answer. Serafina Cole, the woman he had once loved, gone. Jareth had stolen his life. Now Keon would take his. Did you think I'd forget? Did you think I'd forgive? Mommy? They had done nothing wrong. They were innocent, just like he had been. He wasn't a monster, was he? Shh, it'll be over soon. A family, completely erased. No survivors, no mercy, just cold-blooded revenge. Who the hell would do something like this? And just like that, he was gone. No trace, no clues, just whispers of a ghost who had returned and vanished. Keon Voss was never found. Some say he changed his name. Others say he disappeared into the wilderness. But one thing is certain. That night, it was the last anyone ever heard of him. Justice or pure evil, you decide. Lockmere was never the kind of town where monsters walked free. But tonight, something monstrous had taken place. Inside this quiet suburban home, a family had been erased. Brutally, mercilessly. The police weren't prepared for what they found. A husband, a wife, 2 children, all murdered in cold blood. And the man responsible, Keon Voss, an ex-convict, a man cheated by life, a man whose thirst for revenge turned him into something far worse than the justice system ever imagined. The crime wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. It was personal. This was a man who had spent years rotting in a cell for a crime he didn't commit. A man who came home only to find his wife, and the man who destroyed him, playing house together. 2 children, children that should have been his, calling another man father. That was the final betrayal. And tonight, Keon made them all pay the price. What happens when a man has nothing left to lose? He runs, and that's exactly what Keon Voss did. The police? They were closing in, but he was always one step ahead. Every gas station, every motel, every highway camera, they were watching. But Keon, he knew how to stay invisible. He had spent years surviving inside a cage. Out here, the world was just a bigger version of prison, and if there was one thing he was good at, it was escaping. They say guilt eats you alive, but Keon, he wasn't guilty. Not for what happened before prison, not for the life they stole from him, but this crime, the blood on his hands now, that he owned. And as he sat there waiting for a bus that would never come, he realized this was always how it would end. I think the guy from the news is here. And just like that, his time was up. Why did you do it? You already know why. Even the children? They weren't mine. Was he a monster, or was he created by one? The jury had to decide. Any regrets, Voss? I regret not doing it sooner. Was this justice, or was he just another victim of a system that never cared? And so, that's where this story ends. A man cheated by life, betrayed by love, destroyed by the system. A man who came back, not for redemption, but for revenge. And when he finally got it, he lost himself completely. Some say he was always a monster, that prison didn't create him, it revealed him. Others, they say he was a victim of deception, of injustice, of a world that failed him at every turn. But the truth, that's up to you to decide. So now I turn to you. What do you think? Was this revenge, or was this murder? Was Keon justified in what he did, or did he become the very monster he hated? Drop a comment below. Tell us what side you're on. Was this justice served, or justice failed? Let's talk about it. But before you go, if you think this was shocking, you haven't seen anything yet. There's another case, even darker, even more twisted. It's waiting for you, right here. Click now, if you dare. Don't miss out. Subscribe for more. And if you love true crime stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We bring you the most shocking, untold crime stories every week, and you don't want to miss the next one. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button now and join us on this journey into the darkest crimes the world has ever seen.